All right, my name's Tim. That's my audience. Over 6.1 million people per the CDC have ADD in this country. So today I'm going to be talking about attention deficit disorder and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder to inform my audience, you guys, about what it is. A lot of famous people have ADD and ADHD, a lot of actors, a lot of hyperactive expression, stuff like that, be it like Jim Carrey and all his roles. Everybody's familiar with Jim Carrey and what he does. Albert Einstein was actually terrible at math, and he did very poorly in school. He obviously is known for the theory of relativity and all that mess, so he also was diagnosed with ADD. As per your speaker expertise, my name is Tim. I was diagnosed in 2015 with ADD. Back in high school, freshman year, I got a 2.86 GPA. I couldn't focus anything. Again, just like Einstein, I could not do math in my head. I just couldn't have anybody explain it to me. I went to a doctor and got prescribed Adderall and then continued my treatment that way. I got a 3.86 GPA overall when I graduated, and I was real close to the National Honor Society. Turns out, after an IQ test, I was pushing upwards of 126. So, imagine that. Today we're going to talk about ADD and ADHD, what it is, how do we treat it, and why it affects so many people. ADD and ADHD is defined as having three things, according to Bush in 2010, inattentiveness, impulsivity, and hyperactivity. ADHD is a component that has hyperactivity, but specifically ADHD and ADD are now split. ADHD is considered by research from Diamond in 2005, Adele Diamond in 2005, to be a deficit of the gene DAT1. DAT1 affects frontal striatal region. What that does is it creates a frenzied or overly active, hyper like Jim Carrey is when he does his roles, a lot of energy all the time, constantly going. It's like somebody who's that morning person. They usually tend to be aggressive and random. Aggressive because not a lot of people can stand them, so they think they're annoying, and then they kind of get angry about it. They can't really fit in too much. There's too much clutter in the brain. Essentially, ADD is a release, is too much or too little dopamine receptors, which are neurotransmitters in the brain in various parts. ADD specifically is deficits of DRD4 gene. This affects the frontal parietal locations, and it results in people being more chill, laid back, kind of absent-minded. When you ask them, hey man, you listen? They're like, what? They're underwhelmed and understimulated. They get bored really quickly, and they cannot relate to the world around them because they're so inside their head and usually can't express themselves on the outside too much. In order to get them going, they need to be added to high risk or high adrenaline environments. When they go through high adrenaline environments, then they typically come back up and enter a normal realm of playing field. This is an EEG. An EEG is an electroencephalogram. What it does is it measures electrical activity in the brain. So as you see here, this is a normal person. Green indicates normal equivalent electrical activity in the whole brain. ADD, you see in this frontal part, there's way too much activity going on. This is a scale of -3 to 3, 3 being the most electrical activity. So it's not evenly spread out, it's all in the forward. A lot of people with these conditions also have anxiety or depression. Anxiety, as you can see, has a lot of activity in the frontal portion of the brain as well. So they're kind of similar. They usually go hand in hand, and it's often misdiagnosed as anxiety. It's been shown that the actual issue here is with working memory. Working memory, as described by Baddeley in 1992 in the CDC, is a process by which you hold information in your head and you try to manipulate or change it. For example, if somebody tells you, hey, look out in the parking lot, how many white cars are there? Well, okay, you count how many white cars are there. Now they say, how many cars were there? So now you try to recall that memory and see how many cars there were. finally they say, hi, how many white trucks were there? Well, now you're changing the information again. So that's working memory. So we talked about what it is. Now we need to know, how do we treat it? Well, we treat it by two things, well, three things really. Stimulant medication, non-stimulant medication, and something called neurofeedback. Stimulant medication is your Adderall, your Concerta, your Vyvanse. What it is it stimulates your central nervous system. It adds more receptors immediately in your brain for consumption. They reduce significantly symptoms in 70 to 80% of people, so it's more widely used. It's also an immediate effect. Nicotine has been shown through studies with Diamond in 2005 to act similarly to the properties of Adderall, which is, or the active ingredient in Adderall. So a lot of people that are undiagnosed with ADD, you might see them take smoking to hold. You may take a lot of smoking or vaping. If they do that a lot and it seems to really ease their symptoms, it's because it does for a little bit. Non-stimulant medications, those increase dopamine, which is a neurotransmitter in the brain, slowly over time, kind of how like SSRIs or antidepressants work. You start to take it, 30 days later, it helps your body produce a even steady flow. They don't work nearly as well. They're typically not utilized if you've started on stimulant medications. If you start on stimulant medications, they'll have no effect on you. And they take a long time to act up, so it's hard to, a lot of people will go to stimulant medications. And then the third method is neurofeedback. Neurofeedback attempts to rewire your brain. It focuses on something called alpha waves. When you focus and you point your attention on something, like if I point my attention on what you're doing in the audience, the alpha waves increase. So what you do is you take a machine, an EEG connected to a computer game, for example, and you're controlling it with thought. The more focus you place on the game, the more you are able to control it. So it's like a positive feedback. So as you function more and learn how to focus more over time for longer periods of time, you're able to play this game. So it's rewarding. Oh, the other way is from the CDC, starting in childhood. If you start in childhood and you learn how to create a routine, become organized, manage distractions, limit choices, create goals, etc., then it helps you in your adult life. So why does this affect so many people? We talked about what it is, how to treat it. Well, why does it affect so many people? So there's a theory called hunter-farmers or hunter-gatherer theory, as discussed in the book by Ferguson in 2014. Over 10,000 years ago, before we had civilization like we do today, surviving was based on who's the best hunter and who's the best gatherer. As the agricultural revolution came around, you needed people who were sitting there taking care of the crops. And you needed people also who would go out and hunt. So the theory is that hunters needed to be easily distractible, so when they're looking out in the field and an animal pops up, their attention instantly shifts to it. Then they need to be able to hyperfocus. Hyperfocus is for at least a short period of time and to be extremely intelligent for a short period of time in a quick amount of time. So that's hunters. Gatherers need to be not distractible whatsoever. And they need to be extremely focused on cultivation, because if cultivation fails and you forget to water crops, all your crops lose out and your people don't eat. As you can see here in this diagram, hunter, we slowly went to the computer age because we don't need it anymore. But so I talked about ADD, what ADD and ADHD are, how to treat them, and why so many people seem to have it. Do I have any questions?
No questions.
No questions.
In conclusion, our genetics offer incredible insight into our species' past and shows just how important it is for all of us to work together based on our weaknesses and strengths. Looking into our genetics, we can see where we came from and what we're best suited to. Some of us are good for other things, some of us are not so good for some things. So standardized testing, for example, stuff like that. It's important to look into education and how we can. Researcher Adele Diamond has shown that individuals with ADD can flourish in environments with spatial skills rather than verbal skills. My name's Tim. Thank you for coming to my presentation, and here is my list of references.